We are now moving to Dafna Feinholz. Dafna Feinholz is the chief of the Bioethics section in the Division of Ethics of Science and Technology of the Sector for Social and Human Services at the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. That title is maybe the longest one, but before joining UNESCO, she was the executive director of the National Commission of Bioethics in Mexico and is a member of Mexico's national research system. She was also tutor for postgraduate programs of bioethics at the National University of Mexico and has wide experience as member of ethics research committees in Mexico and abroad. In 2005, Dr. Feinholz was Mexico's representative to UNESCO to the expert intergovernmental meetings to finish the Universal Declaration of Bioethics and Human Rights. Welcome, Dr. Feinholz.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much. I'm joining the previous speakers in thanking you for the invitation and also for the possibility of sharing with you, which I think, as you said, I was the representative of Mexico when this declaration was drafted, and now I'm here in order to, for me, it's really an opportunity because when we as member states were discussing this instrument, it was in the light of possible real situations such as the one we are facing now. So for me, it's now, as an official staff of UNESCO, really a nice opportunity to be here. And so, of course, I decided to use this opportunity of my presentation in these 10 minutes. I'm not going to say what UNESCO is about, but more that what are the challenges that we are facing and what this document could be useful. And I chose only one of the articles which I thought was the more relevant for the discussion that we're having today. So I think Guatemala is it's an example, but it's not the only case and not the only thing we have to think about, because there are many challenges now that we have to face, which is basically how we can bring the same level of protection for human research participants across borders and international cross-border research, and how can we do it universally? And there are many realities that we have to take into account when we are trying to do this, which is it's a fact that there is a diversity of legal and ethical review system in each country, whether by law, whether by capacity in the members who are the people who are conducting these activities, the diversity of health systems, which is also very important and linked also with resources available for research, because that is also a way of how governments many times see research in international cooperation, if this is an investment or if this is something that is important or if this is an only mean to get things into countries, and that's why possible potential conflicts of interest come, or potential problems of exploitation, or defining benefits when an agreement is set by different governments that are going into the enterprise. And of course, involving different levels of empowerment of participants. And in fact, we have different societies which are, the possibility of citizens to use their rights, it's very different, both in the health sector and in others. And of course, the differences in cultures and in system values, which is also very important in how people are understanding the rights and the participation on the different ethical values involved in safeguarding the participants in research. There is also an ambiguity regarding the existing laws and regulations, because every state has different regulations and different right traditions, and it's also not always clear who is the relevant authority in each country to be acknowledged to have some action in when decisions has to be made regarding research. And I think the transborder flow of tissue collection and genetic data or samples is one of the good examples that we can see where this ambiguity is causing problems, and definitely biomedical research in poor countries, which really need and call for greater vigilance to avoid exploitation. And I guess something that is very clear is that against all this, or in the background of all this, is one ethical principle there all the time, which is that violations to human rights, no matter who is committing that violation, is of relevance for the entire community. That it's not something that can be blamed or put only on the one who is doing it. So the globalization is leading to spreading also the scientific and the technological advances, but also creates particular bioethical dilemmas, and also spreads the bioethical dilemmas that are already in place because of the advancement of science and technology. And of course, this global character of contemporary science and the increasing number of research coming from so different countries, it's calling for a global approach of bioethics. It's really the time and that regulations and perspectives do not reflect only the interest or approaches of any particular region, but of the global community. And that's why UNESCO was founded, to enable a debate, and it's really one of the unique global and pluralistic forums to discuss all these complex issues. And I think one of the best, really the most important achievements has been this Universal Declaration of Bioethics and Human Rights that was adopted in 2005. And it's important to say that it was adopted by acclamation, which is not a very common thing to do. And if we think that this is about bioethics, which is such a sensitive issue, it's also, I guess, very important. Two brief comments. On the process, there is a committee of independent experts who draft who prepared the first drafting after a very wide consultation of at least 2 years with many various stakeholders. And then this document goes to the intergovernmental committee experts who are really now the representatives of governments who look at the document from a completely different perspective, which is what does it mean in terms of political commitments. And they endorsed it, and then it goes to the General Conference, who endorsed it by acclamation. So I think this is important because who were the ones who committed themselves to this document? There were 191 governments, and of course the US government was one of the most active in the drafting of this declaration in the Intergovernmental Committee. So the countries that have that have agreed to the declaration are committed themselves to pass national legislations on bioethics and to promote systems of review at the national level, and to promote and enhance education and encourage public debate. And basically through different organisms such as the national committees as you are. The document is important to read as a whole. It's not. It's very difficult as any other to use only one of the principles, and there are. But I'm not going to talk about all of them. But as you can see, amongst the many principles identified, many aspects related to research and other issues are already there, as consent, confidentiality, benefit, solidarity, protection of environment. But I'm going to concentrate on Article 21, which is devoted only to transnational practices. And the article, the first part, reads, in short, the key messages of the article is that it calls for states to ensure compliance with the principle of the declaration, regardless of the difference of geographical context and ambiguity of authorities, which is, of course, a challenge, because that's exactly what needs to be done. But at least this is the context. And then it says that when research is undertaken or otherwise pursued in one or more states, the host state or states and funded by a source in another state, should research be the object of an appropriate level of ethical review, both in the host states and in the state where the funder is located. I think this is really important because this is pointing to the need of multiple review of research, and the idea basically is to avoid to have different ethical standards, of course, to avoid the exploitation of poor and ignorant and disempowered populations. And there is a claim that sometimes the issue that the fact that there are health needs that are very urgent that need to have been solved, that they could be an excuse for researchers in developed countries to look different on the ethical principles, because as if the time was more important to justify, right? The importance of the multiple review is also related to other part of the articles, which has already been mentioned. That is, their research needs to be responsive to the local health needs. And how is this going to be defined? It is true, it's not so easy, but it can only be done if the local researchers and the local ethics committees and the local authorities are involved in the discussion with the funded agency or country. And also promotes disharmonization of discordant policies, because it's only in this dialogue that you can do, and also to define and ensure the benefits, both for the population participants and for the country. It's only in this dialogue that it can be achieved. So, and also it's important because the fourth part of the article, it's encouraging a basis or to foster equal participation in negotiation in terms of collaboration, also in defining those benefits. And something that is, I think, very important is to foster the more horizontal collaboration between the host and the funding countries, and to foster capacity building. The only way of doing that, and everything is self-helping, because if you promote more capacity building, then you are in better terms to really enter negotiations in more equal circumstances, which is part of the reason why it's not possible now, even if we have it at an ideal. But if you don't have sources or capacity, how will you? So I think it's important to build confidence between countries. And the last one I just wanted to say is that there are other things. And also, I just wanted to say this is important also because in the declaration, when we speak about benefit sharing, because there is another article, which I would have developed more if I had 20 minutes, but we will do during the discussions, would have been benefit sharing. And in the declaration, it states that there shouldn't be coercion, not only for individuals, but also for states when defining benefits. So that's why I think it is important. So just a final thought about the importance of the role of industry and how the market is being developed in such a way that market is developed, but not at the same pace as to cover the needs of the more needed one. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Feinholz.